Even if you were to go back just 2 years, if you were to meet me and tell me that João Mário was one of Benfica's best players right now, you would probably be met with some laughs. João Mário? The sporting guy, the guy who joined Inter in their banter years and ended up taking a tour of Europe to test the waters in Russia and the Premier League? You're saying he would be at the heart of some of the best Benfica performances I've seen in recent memory? The 2022-23 edition of João Mário has taught us a lot. Well, one, yes, how to take a penalty properly. Don't worry, rival supporters, we'll talk about his penalties. And two, that there are many different ways up the mountain and that the direct route, the most steep route, that is the most difficult, just isn't for everyone. Sometimes you just need to take it slow. You need to take the winding route up the mountain in order to get the best results. And for João Mário, that equates to being an integral piece of Benfica's puzzle, while doubling his career goal tally in just 40 appearances. Hey guys, and welcome to Rabona TV. I'm Adrian, and I'm excited to look into João Mário a little bit. Like I just said, if you had told me a few years ago how good he would be for Benfica this season, let alone how important he would be to their general play, I would have laughed at you. But that's the reality we live in, and he's quickly become one of my favorites to watch under Roger Schmidt. So we'll look back on his career as well as explain why João Mário is finally delivering on the potential that saw him go from Sporting to Inter for around 45 million euros in 2016. João Mário was born in Porto in January of 1993, making him 30 years old today. But he was just 11 years old when he moved from the Porto Youth Academy to Sporting's Academy in Lisboa in 2004. Yes, João Mário is another name from Sporting's famed Alcochete Academy. 7 years after joining the academy, he would make his debut for the first team in 2011, which came a year after João Mário was named in the UEFA Euro Under-17 Championship Team of the Tournament for the 2010 edition. By all marks, João Mário was establishing himself as a great talent for the future, a player that would represent Portugal for a long, long time. And while he, of course, has ended up doing so, just as we mentioned in the intro, he took some breaks and different routes along the way. He wasn't a mainstay throughout. Even at Sporting, while he made his breakthrough as an 18-year-old in December of 2011, he wouldn't get regular minutes until 3 seasons later during the 2014-15 season. In the meantime, he represented Sporting's B team, and after he impressed there, he was sent on loan to Vitória Setúbal, aka Mourinho's club.
My little place.
Mourinho actually has nothing to do with that move, by the way. I just can't hear that name without thinking of Mourinho saying,
Setúbal boy.
João Mário returned to Sporting for the 2014-15 season, in which he was a mainstay there. Over the next 2 seasons, he would feature in 44 and 45 matches respectively, scoring 7 goals across all competitions in each season. These performances earned the trust of Fernando Santos, who ended up starting João Mário as a winger, more on his preferred position later, in all but one of Portugal's matches on the road to their Euro 2016 victory, that match being their second group stage match against Austria. Other than that, he went the distance in that tournament, playing all 120 minutes of the final as he went on to be crowned as a European champion with his country, making history. Later that summer, Inter Milan purchased João Mário for 40 million euros plus 5 million euros in bonuses, and included in that agreement a clause that would prevent Inter from selling João Mário to one of Sporting's rivals without a massive penalty. More on that later, as it's quite important. This is where we get to the part of João Mário's career where you just couldn't tell where he would end up as a player. Based on his youth career, how he became an important part of the Portuguese national team's biggest triumph of all time, and how he had just secured a move to a Serie A giant like Inter, all things pointed to a continuous upward trajectory for the Portuguese attacker, right? But at Inter, it was all change. It was too much change too fast for him. A change of country, a change in the level of competition, and most importantly, a change in position. Now, when you're a player like João Mário, being able to play in a multitude of places on the pitch can be a blessing. On the left, on the right, through the middle, but it can also be a massive curse. At Inter, he was joining an Inter side that had fallen behind their peers. The season prior, they finished 4th, and before that, 8th. João Mário joined Inter for one of the most bantery of banter seasons. This 2016-17 season would see them start things off with Frank de Boer, who would be sacked by November 1st. Stefano Pioli would step in, only to get his marching orders by May 9th, and Stefano Vecchi would see out the final 3 matches of the season as Inter landed in 7th. That isn't exactly the kind of stability you would hope for when you're changing clubs and going through an evolution as a young 23-year-old player. But with Luciano Spalletti coming in, the idea of there being some stability and optimism for the future will have subsided rather quickly. While the reasons for João Mário's inability to adapt to Italian football had been speculated for some time, was it overly tactical and defensive, as mooted by some Portuguese journalists, while Italian journalists such as Mirko Graziano said, quote, "Arriving with a price tag of over 40 million euros didn't help him. He showed difficulties in dealing with criticism. Italian football is very physical, and João Mário is a delicate player with a refined football. I'd say he's the perfect player to play in Spain." However, it wouldn't be until João Mário's second season with Benfica, we're jumping ahead here, stay with me, where we would find that João Mário was being played out of position. Played more centrally, he is more prone to getting lost amongst the play and far less effective. Being played as a wide midfielder who was given the license to drift inside, that's where he thrives. At Inter, most of his play was through the middle, and while he started the season with 4 assists in 6 matches, he began a mainstay of the bench in the fall, and he was sent on loan to West Ham in January. Now again, why I brought up what the Italian journalist said is because João Mário, the player he deemed to be delicate, was en route to one of the most physical leagues in the Premier League. And his performances there under David Moyes were, not a ton to write home about. While João Mário was with West Ham, the supporters didn't mind him. But upon his 6 months being up with the club at the end of the 2017-18 season, the Portuguese attacker burned some bridges, saying, quote, "The Inter fans were also crucial. For them, I was both an idol and a bad player. It would be great if I found the right balance. I've been in England, and they're all too quiet there. I prefer the warmth of our fans." Now, it's important to note that upon leaving Inter on loan, his relationship with the supporters was a bit rocky. And so with his return and trying to make amends, much of his talking had to happen on the pitch. The 2018-19 season, Spalletti's last at Inter, would be another forgettable season for João Mário, as it became clearer by the day that the unhappy marriage with Inter just wouldn't work out. He had a spell mid-season where he was a starter for Spalletti, but again, with the benefit of hindsight, he was almost exclusively played as a central midfielder and not given that license to be creative and cut inside from the wide areas, which is where he's best. So, it came as no surprise that Inter would send their 40 million euro signing on loan again, but this time to Russia, as João Mário would join Lokomotiv Moscow on a season-long loan in August of 2019, and early days, things were going well. We had a happy João Mário, as he said, quote, "I have reached a point in my career where the most important thing is to play regularly. Lokomotiv was the club that wanted me most, and this was decisive, because I wanted a project where I felt important. Having the chance to play in the Champions League also weighed heavily on my choice. I'm happy here. I have found a very well-organized club. After a few negative moments, a club like Lokomotiv was just what I needed, a good team with positive dynamics in which I feel important." Unfortunately for João Mário, the good vibes wouldn't last. Perhaps the saddest thing is that he wouldn't get to stick around with a Portuguese football legend like Éder very long, as a broken toe and COVID would rock this campaign, sending him back to Antonio Conte's Inter at the end of the 2019-20 season and on the search for yet another club. However, I think what João said about finding a place where there was a positive dynamic and where he felt important, I think that became his guiding light in his career when it came to deciding his next moves, as he would of course return to Sporting to play under Ruben Amorim, and what a season to do so. Prior to this, João Mário had just won one club trophy, well, counting the Portuguese Supertaça. Again, my bad, I always look over the Super Cups, but I know people like them and have genuine reasons for doing so. So, prior to this season, he had 2 trophies under his belt. Try this again. The Supertaça from 2015, which Sporting only had the right to compete for thanks to winning the Taça de Portugal in the 2014-15 season. But the 2020-21 season would be a massive one for the green side of Lisboa, as Amorim and the fellas would march on to win both the Taça da Liga, the League Cup, and the Primeira Liga title, their first time since the 2001-2 season. So there was something poetic about João Mário, an academy boy who represented Sporting for so long, returning to the club for their first league title in 19 years, almost 2 decades, without a single league title. However, all of the good vibes and ring around the rosy hand-holding would come to an abrupt end that summer. João Mário's transfer to Benfica was a weird one. In fact, calling it a transfer is actually inaccurate. João Mário signing with Benfica was a weird one. Remember earlier how I said there was a clause in his contract with Inter that said there would be a 30 million euro anti-rival clause should João Mário sign with a rival of Sporting's? Well, that clause was never paid. Why? Well, this is how it went down. João Mário returns to Sporting, helps them to a cup double under Amorim, and in the process, his performances caused Sporting to consider signing João Mário on a permanent transfer. In fact, given that he was in the final year of his contract in the summer of 2021, Sporting thought that they had some muscle to use against Inter. Couple this final season leverage with the fact that they had this anti-rival clause in João Mário's contract, and Sporting will have felt very confident that they could make this move happen. Was he their best player from that season? No, but he would be useful to bring in some veteran experience to Amorim's young Sporting side. Now, what actually happens? Clearly, Benfica had been in João Mário's ear, and they found a way to circumvent the 30 million euro anti-rival clause. João Mário would just need to buy out the remainder of his Inter contract, so 7 million euros worth, in order to mutually terminate his contract, meaning that anti-rival clause would no longer exist, and Benfica could approach him as they would a free agent. No doubt covering the cost of his contract termination through signing bonuses, etc. Now, for all of that noise, what did Benfica get from João Mário in his first season with the club? Well, more of the same of what we saw at Sporting, I think. Just fine, nothing incredibly impressive, just a fine, solid midfielder. Part of that could have been down to, once again, Jorge Jesus playing João Mário out of his favored position, often playing him a little more central than he would prefer, starting him centrally. But with Roger Schmidt coming in, we've seen João Mário become the player that we always thought he was capable of being. Not only is he a leader and he has taken the responsibility of taking penalties for Benfica, but his general play has improved greatly, and he thanks Schmidt for this, as João Mário has gone on the record to say that Schmidt is one of the few managers that has actually played him in his preferred position, a wide midfielder or winger starting position rather than through the middle. And when you compare João Mário's heat maps from this season to previous seasons, you can see that he is spending far more time on the flank, namely the right flank, where he previously had a more balanced or indecisive heat map. I say indecisive because he was kind of thrown everywhere, starting centrally, but allowed to drift wide, rather than the inverse. After his first season, I wasn't that thrilled about his signing. I wasn't against it. I just didn't see him as a player that was capable of elevating Benfica. But he changed my mind under Roger Schmidt to the point where the thought of not having him in Benfica's 11 genuinely scares me, as he has evolved from a player that will contribute a bit in the build-up to an attack to a player that can completely facilitate an attack through him and has the efficiency to finish it off himself at the end of it as well. João Mário has become one of the first names on the team sheet at Benfica, and as mentioned a moment ago, has taken on the responsibility of being Benfica's main penalty taker, the first time he has been the main penalty taker in his career, and he's taken to it swimmingly, converting 12 of 14 attempts. But it's not just from the spot where he has shone, as he has scored 11 from open play also, as he has shown a knack for arriving late in the box for a cutback or drifting to the back post to tuck in a goal, equally as adept one-on-one with the keeper, just a general improvement in attacking play overall, as well as providing 12 assists for a grand total of 23 goals and 12 assists from 40 appearances. That's 35 goal contributions from 40 appearances, including 6 goals in the Champions League against the likes of Juve and PSG. In total, throughout his career, João Mário had scored 23 goals while representing Sporting in 2 different stints, Inter in 2 stints, West Ham and Lokomotiv Moscow, as well as 4 goals last season for Benfica, so 27 in total in 293 matches. Already this season, he has nearly matched that number with 23 goals, taking just 40 appearances this season to nearly match what he had managed to achieve in 293 appearances throughout his career, playing at his 5th club in as many years. Because again, not everyone wants to take that direct route to the top of the mountain. It's often a lonely route that will do its absolute best to defeat you. Sometimes with the winding path, you find where you belong, where you feel important. Of course, the public is always critical of this path when they have built up an expectation for your career, but the path is always easier when you're enjoying yourself. That's it for this one, guys. Just some quick Benfica propaganda from me here to close out this international break. If you enjoyed it, then subscribe and stick around for more. But other than that, I'll see you on Monday for the weekend recap. Ciao.